Kodomomuke is one of 5 categories that describe how Japanese animation is delineated. These delineations or types of anime are used to market to a specific audience or population, be they girls, boys, younger, or older. Now, among the 5 types of anime, Kodomomuke is rather unique. Kodomomuke is a Japanese word that can be translated to intended for children, and that is what Kodomomuke is all about. It's anime that is for children. Now, many consider all anime to be for children, but specifically, Kodomomuke is intended for persons under the age of 13. Kodomomuke generally feature child protagonists rather than teenage or adult protagonists. These characters, and by extension their stories, promote moral lessons. Usually these lessons are about values like friendship, a standard in many kinds of anime, teamwork, forgiveness, and kindness. These values in particular because child anime is generally believed to be more inherently about teaching and education, and things the very young must learn. Therefore, Kodomomuke tend to favor episodic programming rather than serialized. In this way, the stories are more self-contained and it is easier to communicate a moral lesson in one episode as if reading a fable or some kind of morality tale than if that lesson arced an entire season. Some of the most popular Kodomomuke include Pokemon, Digimon, Doraemon, Beyblade, Yokai Watch, Pretty Cure, Astro Boy, Hamtaro, Magical Do-Re-Mi, and Jungle Emperor Leo. Now, all of these Kodomomuke include shows like Pokemon or Pretty Cure that have overarching stories, but although they have serialized aspects, they are primarily episodic programs, with each episode usually being about a specific lesson or journey that one character or another has to learn or go on. One should also notice a couple of other things about any list of Kodomomuke. You should remember that toddler age to 12 is a pretty large bracket, so some Kodomomuke skew towards younger audiences and some skew towards older viewers. One of the primary features of Kodomomuke is that they're generally lighthearted and about fun and often meant to be funny. It is a general stereotype of anime that they're usually overly dramatic or feature, more often than not, storylines that are very heartrending or beautiful. But this is not true for Kodomomuke. Kodomomuke is the type of anime that can be as zany and energetic as Western animation. Still, Kodomomuke does have its fair share of drama. Drama in Kodomomuke is much the same as any anime. You'll see the typical big superhero and villain fare, with people taking over the world or threatening peace. However, you'll also see really interpersonal stories about learning to trust, making amends, and finding the confidence to keep going. And Kodomomuke, like most anime, takes itself pretty seriously. The lives of the characters and their personal dramas, be they about jealousy or self-esteem, aren't undermined by their comedic beats. So when a character cries or smiles, you tend to feel it with them. However, for as dramatic as some Kodomomuke get, there are some boundaries they tend not to cross. Kodomomuke is child-focused, so in general, when we talk about under 13 anime, we're talking about programs that don't feature obvious or overt romances or overt displays of human death. Romances in Kodomomuke tend to be hinted at rather than stated outrightly. They're most often crushes that are usually left unfulfilled, and that the two never become a couple. However, the crush does usually have some type of satisfying arc, and that although the pair doesn't become a couple, they do reciprocate some manner of positive feelings or even mutual affection, yet tending not to show overt displays of sexual or romantic attraction like kissing. Romance is a type of relationship that tends to be more mature and strays a little from the demographic and the intention to focus on learning and more virtuous character traits like friendship. other hand, is handled with a little more directness. Death is something that characters eventually have to deal with. Being there for a friend who has been touched by death is a common occurrence even for children. But in Kodomomuke, deaths tend to take place off-screen or in the past. Characters aren't likely to experience death in their present journeys or even in a serialized fashion, usually leaving it to one-off episodes. However, when death is present in the narrative, it usually isn't of humans. Magical deaths tend to be far more common than realistic human deaths in Kodomomuke. Non-human characters being destroyed or killed, or human characters who disappear due to magic are far more common. Most likely, when it comes to human deaths, you'll see flashbacks of things that happened to characters in the past and how that grief persists, rather than seeing a character actively respond to the human death of a loved one. Now, so far we have summed up what the Kodomomuke genre is in anime. It's for children, an under 13 demographic. It's fun and funny. It's about teaching lessons and is usually episodic. It has drama, but tends to stay away from overt romance and realistic death. However, there are some genre benders out there. Every production has a different aesthetic or narrative voice, and despite how much we'd like to draw within the lines, there are programs that tend to blur them. One such show is Cardcaptor Sakura, and its most recent incarnation, Cardcaptor Clear Card. This is a Kodomomuke, but how it strays beyond the genre's general boundaries is in the realm of romance. Cardcaptor is a very romantic IP, and despite its adherence to the typical traits of Kodomomuke, being very episodic and usually having a lesson in each episode, the efforts that the show makes to embody romance is quite deliberate. Although the show doesn't do anything as banal as having one character outrightly declare that another is their boyfriend or girlfriend, there are clear couples, and it is often stated even indirectly that they are together, like Sakura and Sharon, and Toya and Yukido. In this way, Cardcaptor tends to approach what's called shoujo anime in its romanticism. Still, for as much as shows like Cardcaptor blur the lines of genre, as well as other Kodomomuke like Astro Boy and its use of action or violence, the term is a useful way to describe the unique colors it brings to anime as a whole through its storytelling and lessons. Kodomomuke is the funny, heartwarming, thoughtful, kawaii animation that all audiences can love.